Thank you, everybody, for joining. It's really good to see everyone. Before we get started, did you have a few things that you wanted to go over housekeeping wise?
Sure. So welcome. We're glad everybody is here. I'm about to put a link into the chat for you to submit questions. That's a Google document, and you can state whether you prefer to remain anonymous or want us to mention your name with your question. So throughout the meeting, at any point during the town hall, you can access that link, and then I'll monitor that the Google form as well. If you just want to type a question into chat, then periodically we'll, when Josh is ready to take questions, then I will pose those questions to him. All right, and we have our interpreters tonight are Katie McVitie and Sharon Reed. Thank you both for interpreting tonight. And of course, our lovely host, and Joshua Holmes. He's our treasurer for SCRID, and we are thrilled that he is taking this difficult topic on, and he's going to share some great information about the Interpreter Act, and as well as some updates for what we on the board have been doing. We've got some great changes to our website, more things planned, so we are excited to share that information with y'all.
So let's get started. Of course, tonight we're going to be talking about the Sign Language Interpreter Act. I will go through the entire act. I will break it down by its parts, and I will talk about what's included in the act, what's not included in the act, and clarify some misinformation about the act itself. And hopefully that will help everyone know what to expect and have everyone on the same page. Don't panic. Tonight's session will be recorded. The PowerPoints will be available and sent to everyone. I believe everyone already has the PowerPoint in their inbox already, but the recording will be available and the slides will be available on the SCRID website as well. You can see here that this is going to be our roadmap for tonight. Of course, I have some disclaimers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the bill, clarifications about the bill, an overview of the bill itself, what's missing from the bill, what's next, and then questions. So the fun part, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I am fully ready to admit that I may not be able to answer the questions that you have tonight, but I will gather questions and get real vetted responses for you and make them available to everyone. So I won't just give you an answer for giving you an answer's sake. You'll get good information. That's very important. I've already mentioned that the PowerPoint recording will be available, and there's at least one really bad dad joke in the PowerPoint. So, the Interpreter Act has been in the works for a very long time. This here is the timeline of when the bill was submitted and voted on and approved and all of that. But the Interpreter Act has been something that we've discussed and worked on and generated different versions of since before 2013. I'm sad to say that even though that's the case, there are still there's still a lot of interpreters in our state that don't know about the Interpreter Act. So one of our priorities is trying to get that information out to as many people as possible. So let's talk about the Interpreter Act. Big point of misunderstanding, miscommunication, misinformation is that the Interpreter Act, the law, is not licensure. When we started the process, we talked about licensure. We negotiated the possibility of licensure, but in South Carolina, our representatives did not want to add another group to LLR, and have the state govern that, handle the list, deal with registration, all of that. The movement was keep government smaller, keep more power to the people instead of the government having to control that. So licensure was out. And what we were left with was the option to advocate for a law that would put forth requirements for interpreting, what you would have to have in order to be able to interpret. There were a lot of different versions of the bill. And at many points, the Interpreter Act included K-12 educational interpreting, but the final version that passed and is now law that goes into effect in 2024 is just for specific areas in the community setting, not K-12 educational interpreting. And we'll go through that. Don't panic. You are not meant to be able to read this slide. This is just so that you can see the bill. This is it. 575 words, 2 pages, and I did a quick calculation of it, and 50% of the bill is definitions. Important definitions, but there's not a lot to the bill or to the law. There are pros and cons to that, and we'll talk about it. So this is the first half of the bill where we go through all of the definitions and we talk about agencies and where the law applies. And if you'll be patient with me, this is a list of all of the agencies that are spelled out in the law. So if you are doing interpreting work for one of these departments, one of these government agencies, then you are required to have recognized certification in order to be able to interpret in that setting. Okay. We will go over what the recognized certifications are tonight. Just bear with me, please. Next, outside of agencies, these are the other areas that are covered by the law. So we have offices of, I can't see the top part. We have the judicial department. We have all public institutions of higher education, commission on higher education, police stations, county and state detention centers, correctional facilities, anything within the state pretty much. And then the last part is that the law excludes school districts, school boards, charter schools, and special schools. So that part did not make it into the final bill that has been approved and become a law now. So this is just for these specific settings in community interpreting. These departments, and then these other areas. Okay. The act doesn't cover private businesses, real estate, private attorneys, job trainings, business meetings, religious services, dental and hearing aid appointments, private medical facilities, festivals, concerts, theatrical productions. Okay. I try to be as optimistic as possible, and the good thing about the bill being so curt, so blunt, is that what is covered by the law is there in black and white. And you know beyond the shadow of a doubt whether or not you have to have a recognized credential to be able to interpret in those settings. Anything outside of that is not included. That being said, of course, I have to have a disclaimer and say that just because the Sign Language Interpreter Act, just because the law doesn't require you to have a recognized credential to interpret in these settings, does not mean that it is not necessary and appropriate for a certified interpreter to be in these settings. So as interpreters, we still have a responsibility and an onus to evaluate ourselves and make sure that we are a good fit for the assignments that we accept. So all of that still comes into play. And then, of course, the ADA still comes into play. So you have to keep all of these things in mind. And it's not just, oh, anybody that's not certified can do any of these. There will be times when that's not appropriate, and you have to use your ethical judgment to make that determination whenever you're considering and taking assignments. The definitions that are in the act, in the law, deaf person, interpreting, recognized certification, sign language, SCRID and SCAD. One important thing to note is that the law defines what interpreting is. So even if you're hired not as an interpreter, but as something else, a signer or a language facilitator or something that's not ASL interpreter, the law defines what interpreting is. So no matter what it is called by the entities and the companies that hire you, that is interpreting, and you have to satisfy the law for those specific settings. I'm gonna take a little break, see if there are any questions, see if I need to clarify anything. I haven't seen any questions in the chat, but I just want to make sure that I don't need to. Okay, all right. Now, for the second half of the law, what we have is where the law applies. It talks about the agencies. That is what I covered in the first half. So all of those different areas that I showed you. And then also it covers hospitals and healthcare facilities covered by DHEC. That part of the law can be a little bit overwhelming and a lot confusing, but we've done some research, and I think that we have a good way for everyone to know what is and what isn't regulated by DHEC, so that you can be confident in knowing whether or not a certified interpreter is needed in whatever location. So also in the second half, it clarifies that in order to interpret in these settings, you have to have a recognized certification. Exceptions to that, which would be emergencies, internship, and mentorship, and then when the law goes into effect. So before I go any further, there are a couple of questions. I'm going to let Tia share those now, and we'll see if we can address them.
All right, we've got an anonymous question. It says the NIC was just recently changed, and last I heard it was still in beta testing, so it's taking up to 6 months just to get results back on the performance portion, not including having to take the first part of the NIC and get results. What happens if one isn't able to get the results from the test before the law goes into effect?
That is a very good question. If you don't have your results before the law goes into effect, these are the settings that it would be appropriate for you to interpret in. And I would not advise that you interpret in any of the settings that were detailed at the start of the PowerPoint until you have a recognized credential. Also, I will go into it a little bit later, but we have additional support for testing prep and scholarships and all of that we'll be going over in the workshop tonight too. So If you look at the law, the DHEC information is detailed in Title 44. And if you go and you pull up that title, it's 19 pages long, 11,368 words. And it's a lot. It's a lot to have to go through that and figure out what is and what is not regulated by DHEC. And the good news is you don't have to do that. I reached out to DHEC and I talked with several people there, and I asked them the question of how can we as professional interpreters know whether a business is regulated by DHEC, thus requiring a recognized certification or a recognized credentialed interpreter for that setting. The feedback that I received from DHEC was that they have a find a facility page on their website, and they gave us the link to that. I don't believe that you can find the link just by going to the website. They said that it was available on their old website, but is kind of behind the scenes on the new website. But the link to find a facility is on the SCRID website now under the Interpreter Act information page. Anybody can go to that link, pull up the find a facility, and you can filter. If you see on the left-hand side, there's options. If you click that, it opens up this filter so that you can filter by location, zip code, name of the facility, anything that you need to. And then you can look and see if the business or the hospital or the service is listed on this this registry with DHEC. If they are on this list, you are required to have a recognized certification credential to interpret in that setting. So, like I said, instead of going through the 11,368 words that are in Title 44 in the DHEC information, use the find a facility feature that, or the website that is linked on the SCRID website on the Interpreter Act page. You can filter by a number of different options to find what you're looking for. If they are listed there, they are regulated by DHEC, and you have to have a recognized certification to work at that facility starting January the 1st, 2024. I'm going to give the interpreters a moment to get switched over, and this is also a good time for any more questions that have come through.
All right, we have a question on the Google form that says, how does one get on the registry? Is the process the same for out-of-state virtual interpreters versus SCRID members?
Great question. And I'm happy to say that I have a good answer. There will not be a separate list of interpreters who meet the qualifications. We will use the registry that we already have through SCRID on the website. We have a directory of all of our members, and you will be able to have your credentials confirmed on your profile so that your information is listed there, so that anyone that is looking for an interpreter can see and find who has the credentials needed to interpret in which settings. I'll go over it a little bit more in a minute, but we'll also have the option for K-12 educational interpreters to have their credentials uploaded and confirmed on the website as well. So there's no additional steps that any of the interpreters are going to need to do other than have your membership that you already have. And then your directory information will be on the SCRID website. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
And I'm trying to keep this as simple, short, and sweet as possible. So please let me know if any additional explanation is needed. Let's see. I see that Dr. Fitzmaurice has added a comment to the chat, and I would agree. There has been, like I said before, this has been in the works prior to 2013. This has been a goal of both SCRID and SCAD. There have been many different versions of the bill that have gone up. There have been scholarship opportunities for quite some time for interpreters in the state to be able to test and get the credentials that they need to interpret. States around us have requirements, whereas we don't. The writing has been on the wall for quite a long time that requirements for interpreting in South Carolina has been needed greatly. I know that there will be people that feel that this is too last minute, that there's not enough time to test and get your results back, that it's too expensive to test, that some people will just be opposed to getting testing through RID because of their own ethical beliefs and their, where they stand as a professional. I understand, but as interpreters in the state of South Carolina, we have ethics to uphold. And we know, because we have been told and we have been working alongside the deaf community, and the deaf community has said, this is what we need and what we want. And we have supported them in that goal. And it finally happened. We finally got the Interpreter Act that puts forth requirements in just these specific settings. And it's a good start. Anything else? Okay. So find a facility. Before you need it, go on the SCRID website and play around with this so that you know how to use it and you're not finding yourself in a moment of, I need to be able to look up something and I don't know how, and kind of have that panic. It doesn't hurt anything to try. Make yourself familiar with it. Bookmark it on your computer and on your phone. This is a tool that you will need as a professional interpreter, and it will remain available on the SCRID website along with instructions. Okay. We're going to get into the requirements, recognize certifications, exceptions, emergencies, all of that. So.
Josh, I do have a couple more questions coming in.
Okay.
So we have another question about, do you have to be a SCRID member to be on the registry, since the SCRID listing is the registry? And what does that mean for our virtual interpreters or for VRS or VRI? Okay.
So you do not have to be on the registry, on our list of interpreters as a SCRID member to be able to work in the state of South Carolina. If you hold affiliate chapter membership in another state or any other variation of that, as long as you have the credentials required by the law to interpret, you're good to go. The reason that we're making our registry more user-friendly for everyone, the deaf community, the hearing community, and the interpreting community, is so that people can easily go and see what interpreters are available, who's doing freelance work, what credentials they have in which field. We're just doing that to make it more accessible to everyone across the board. That way, nobody's trying to reach out through a phone tree of people and call a million people and find out, oh, you can't take the job anyway. They can just go to the registry, see the interpreters there, see their credentials, and they can know who to call and start booking interpreting services. If you have not looked yet, I would suggest everyone go to the SCRID website and look at our member directory. There have been changes to how that information is listed. And those changes have made things a lot more easy to digest, more user-friendly for anyone. And that registry is not closed to just SCRID members. Anyone can go to the SCRID website and see our registry. Now, so recognized certifications, credentials by SCAD and SCRID. Our organizations have been very purposeful about working together to properly vet and review various credential options to see what we can accept in the state of South Carolina, what would be acceptable for the areas, the settings covered by the law. I'm going to show everyone in just a second a list of the credentials that have been agreed on what we're going to accept. And I want everyone to know and understand that that is not a complete and final list. Other credentials can be discussed and reviewed. SCRID and SCAD will maintain our partnership. We will discuss if anyone has something that they feel like should be considered as a credential. Please reach out to SCRID or SCAD, and we will be meeting regularly to go over that, especially leading up to 2024. I'm going to give everyone a moment to look at the list and digest. You can probably tell that we were pretty generous or welcoming of a number of different credentials, because our thought in reviewing the various credentials and certifications that interpreters across the state might have is that the people that have these older credentials have been working in the state for a number of years, and they're far and few between at this point for some of these. And we did not want to single out any individual who has an older certification or an older credential and remove them from the interpreting field.
Josh, we have I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We have a question asking about the EIPA and why isn't it on the approved list?
So again, this is for community interpreting, and the EIPA is not listed here because we will be talking about K-12 educational interpreting a little bit later. If the EIPA is something that members want SCRID and SCAD to consider as a credential for community interpreting, that is something that you are welcome to reach out to us and ask us to review. These are just the credentials that we have reviewed and decided to accept at this point. Again, we did not want to exclude any interpreters across the state, no matter what credential they had and when they obtained that. The majority of these credentials are not obtainable at this point anyway. But again, we did not want interpreters in the state to have to go back and retest and get a new certification, a new credential to be able to continue working because they've been working the entire time. Not only do they have these credentials, but they also have years of experience to maintain their certification, their credential. They had to have continuous professional development workshops, CEUs. So it's not just a matter of them having that specific credential. Are there any questions about this for now?
And we do have a comment from Josie McDaniel Burkett saying that, yes, I do want that. There are interpreters who are doing community work that have a high level EIPA.
Okay. That's something that SCRID and SCAD will certainly look at together as part of our partnership. We have ongoing meetings, and that is something that we will review. I will say, I think that this is fair enough to say at this point that EIPA and educational interpreting skills are very different from community interpreting skills. So it is something that we will not go into lightly, and will properly vet it and make sure that it would be appropriate, because an interpreter who has an EIPA in the medical interpreting setting or any of the other areas, they may not have the skills necessary to be able to function well in those settings. But that is something that we will properly vet and explore before we make a decision. So, and we're open to any comments, public feedback, your rationale, your justification, all of that.
And we have some comments in the chat from Jennifer Place Lewis and Dr. Stephen Fitzmaurice echoing that the EIPA is a school-based assessment, is not community-based. Absolutely would not endorse EIPA used for community interpreting.
All factors that we have to consider before we make a determination on whether or not that will be added to the recognized certifications list. So again, this list will be available. This PowerPoint will be available on the SCRID website. So anyone can go back to this and reference it later. Please, after this session is done, share this with all of the interpreters that you know, because we have interpreters in the state that are not involved with SCRID. They're not involved with RID. They're not connected with other interpreters. They're not getting this information. And there's a lot of misinformation about requirements and the law itself. And we need to get this information out to them. So, like I said before, the law, the final version that was enacted, does not include K-12 educational interpreting. There were versions of the Interpreter Act before that did include educational interpreting, EIPA scores, a timeline for when you would need to have what score and when it would increase. The final version that is now law does not include educational interpreting. Okay. And I'm sorry, interpreters, I was not paying attention to the time. Do you need an opportunity to switch? Okay.
And Josh, we had a question about the credentials. Would you consider the VQAS or other state credential?
We will consider any credential. If you reach out to us and share with us what credential you would like SCRID and SCAD to review, we are happy to do that, and we want to do that so that we have all of the appropriate options available to people that need and want to work in the state. So any credential that you feel like you haven't considered this or it's not on the list, It's not because we said, no, we disagree. These are just the credentials that we were comfortable with approving now because we had evidence to support that they would be an appropriate credential for the settings that the law has spelled out. Next that's missing is requirements outside of what is mentioned in the law. So in the state of South Carolina, we have this law that puts forth requirements for credentials in the settings that I listed out at the beginning. And then outside of that, there is no law that dictates what credentials you would have to interpret in those various settings. That's a good and a bad thing. My philosophy on it right now in efforts to be as positive as I can be, because being anything else is not helpful, is that we have a clear list of where you need to have a recognized credential. And then we have areas that you don't have to have a recognized credential. And that is your pathway to getting credentialed. That is your gap opportunity. That is your safe space to be able to work with other interpreters, accept those assignments, build your skills, get ready for testing, all of that, so that you can go into those higher risk environments confidently and with a credential that shows that you are qualified to do so. There has been a lot of chatter and talk about the law. And I know that there have been some bold comments from people that say, if I don't follow the law, there's nothing that's going to happen. I would not recommend that be anyone's philosophy, because the law is very clear. It says exactly what you need to have to interpret in those settings. It does not explain who's responsible for making sure that you have a credential that's appropriate for those settings. So you yourself, all alone by yourself, can be held accountable for violating the law, for breaking the law. It's not worth it. It's not worth going out and accepting interpreting work in those fields, in those settings, without a recognized credential and jeopardizing your entire career by doing so. It is not worth it for agencies. We have wonderful agencies in South Carolina, and several of them are in the meeting tonight. It is not worth it for you to allow agencies, spoken language agencies that don't know about this, to attempt to send you to assignments that you may not have the right credential for. Will the agency be held responsible for that? Will the interpreter be held responsible for that? Or maybe both? I would not recommend that anyone put themselves in a position where they can be the example, where they can be the first, because that's what it's going to take for people to believe that they have to follow the law in South Carolina. And all of that aside, the deaf community has clearly communicated and educated and advocated that they need and want appropriately credentialed interpreters in these settings. If you are a decent interpreter, if you are an ethical interpreter, you should show respect for the deaf community that you serve. If they are clearly saying and have been working for a decade, over a decade, to get requirements passed in South Carolina, that should be respected regardless of a law. The community needs better access. That's my soapbox. Like I said before, the law does not afford provisional licenses, a license at all. The ability to interpret for, a temporary amount of time before you get certified in these settings. That is what the other settings are for. It also does not give a lot of detailed information and guidance. You saw the law. It's very short. It's very to the point. It is very black and white. And like I said, there are pros and cons to that. Are there any questions?
Yes, we've had a couple more questions. One person said there are interpreters that work for Purple and Sorensen that are not certified in doing community work. Are they required to follow this law, or is there an exception for Purple and Sorensen?
Anyone doing work in the state of South Carolina is expected to follow South Carolina law.
And then another question says, is SCRID doing anything with recruiting interpreters to South Carolina, as we already have a shortage of community interpreters, and this might make it more difficult to find interpreters for appointments?
Yes. Realistically, I expect, and we all should expect, that there will be growing pains as the state transitions and gets used to this new law. We will have a period of time where people aren't even aware of the law, and we're going to have to do a lot of education. Our partnership with SCAD is addressing that. We're doing a lot of outreach. We're doing a lot of education. We're going to try and get all of the information out to everybody as frequently and clearly as possible. SCRID has already had efforts happening to recruit new interpreters. You may have noticed as members that we have been doing what we are calling mini workshops, and we are making workshops available for free to members, and also free to anyone. We did a workshop not too long ago called Pathways to Interpreting, where our president, Katie McGiddy, talked about how to become an interpreter and the various settings that you can interpret in. That was a workshop that we did for free that anyone could come to. And we also have made the recording for that workshop free and available to anyone. And it's posted publicly on YouTube so that others can find it. We are also working as a board to do more outreach and tabling at things like career fairs to get people into the field of interpreting. And I will say, not only that, but there are a lot of interpreters in the state who are not involved with SCRID that we need to recruit to the field of interpreting officially. A lot of people that are hidden out working in small pockets in rural areas, and we need them to also join and be a part of the professional organization so that we have a more robust pot of interpreters to pull from.
And Josh, we have someone seeking clarification for Sorensen and Purple for their call centers for virtual interpreters. The law applies to them as well?
That is something that I'm going to hold off on answering, and I will make sure that I research and give a good answer to it later on, instead of answering now. Okay. Next, K-12 educational interpreting. Again, not included in the Interpreter Act. For K-12 educational interpreting, that is something that SCRID and SCAD are working on together. And we are working to address K-12 educational interpreting through working with the Department of Education and the Office of Special Education Services to develop regulations for educational interpreters and what the requirements will need to be for that subpopulation of interpreters. The law did not include anything about K-12 educational interpreting, but there was another piece in this process, and you can see that on the screen, that relevant stakeholders, South Carolina Association of the Deaf, South Carolina Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, the State Board of Education will develop regulations for the appropriate credentialing of sign language interpreters. Just like the Interpreting Act, this is something that we have been talking about for a decade at least. There should be no surprises when it comes to educational interpreter regulations. If you look at states that neighbor us and our nation in general, you can see what interpreter regulations for K-12 interpreters are needed and kind of the standard. As of right now, there are no regulations for K-12 educational interpreters for the state. Again, that doesn't mean that anybody with any EIPA score or no EIPA score should be interpreting, but it is a separate process outside of the Interpreter Act, the interpreter law. Okay, so the big question is what's next? I mentioned it before, but SCRID support. We're going to have more interpreting skill, NIC test prep, mentorship. We're going to have a lot more workshops, education, professional development available to members and interpreters across the state so that people can get their skills ready to take a test. And there are a fair number of interpreters in the state who have the skills already to take and pass a test, but they haven't because there has not been a requirement. Testing takes a lot of time. Testing is expensive and it's a pain. There are plenty of reasons to put it off. Now that we have the Interpreter Act, there's one good enough reason to make it happen and go ahead and take the test and get credentialed. To that note, we also have testing scholarships that we have had available for quite some time. I will be honest and let you know that this is not something that people have taken advantage of. It should not surprise me because it has been this way for years, but frequently we review every quarter applicants for the testing scholarship, and we won't even have enough people to have to debate and vote on. There are that few people taking advantage of testing scholarships. Please take advantage of them. That is our mission. That is what we do. We provide support to interpreters in the state of South Carolina, but we need people to take advantage of the support, of the education, of everything that we provide when we provide it. So please apply for testing scholarships. Let us use our funds to pay for you to attempt your test. We are also, nothing is confirmed yet, but we are also in talks with other agencies and organizations that are interested in funding additional testing scholarships. And we will be expanding those scholarship opportunities before from now until leading up to the effective date for the Interpreter Act, so that we can get more people connected to testing and the funds that they need to take the test. Okay. Before I do the last section, do the interpreters need to switch again? Okay. So I mentioned before that there have been a lot of changes with the SCRID website. Please visit the website, make yourself familiar with it. We are expanding the information there. There's detailed information about the Interpreter Act. All of tonight's materials will be available on the website. But just as important, the SCRID website has had some significant changes with our infrastructure to be able to handle the needs that we're going to have January 2024. Members who have been members, please go to the SCRID website, log into your profile, and update your information. Footnote to that, you will be able to see information on your profile that other people cannot. So just because you can see it does not mean that other people will be able to see and access it. It is just information that we use internally. For example, your address. We do not share publicly your address with anyone. We would like to collect addresses so that if we ever need to mail anything, we're able to do that. And then also so that we know where interpreters are in the state. If any part of your address is shared, it would be your zip code, so that people who are looking for interpreters can say, I'm in Spartanburg and I'm looking for interpreters close to 29305 or whatever the zip code is. Your home address will not be shared with anyone. Your credentials, the actual credential that you have will be listed, but the document to confirm your credential will not be shared. So you can go update your profile, pull it up and select, I have an EIPA, whatever you have, and then you can upload your score sheet to verify that you have that EIPA score. Your actual documentation, your score, will not be publicly available to anyone. That is just there to verify your credential. Same with community credentials. You can select the credentials that you have, and then you can upload the supporting documents so that you can be marked as verified for having those credentials on the website. Those of you that have your information set up with RID and you have a Credly account, you can put your profile link there as verification for your credentials. That's one of the fields that's available. So it is between now and the 1st of January, please update your information. Please put everything there so that when we experience the growing pains of, I need a certified or a credentialed interpreter for this setting, and I've got to find them now, there will be a list readily available. Do yourself a favor and handle that as soon as possible. Another feature that we have updated for the website is there is now a member app. You can see that on the screen now. Wild Apricot for members. Download that. You log in with your SCRID account information, and you can also update your member profile there. You can also view the registry there, and you can find interpreters there. Really good, powerful tools that you will need for when we start going through these growing pains. Okay. Are there any questions at this point?
Yes, in the chat, there is a clarification that educational interpreters are not bound by the January 2024 deadline.
That is correct. The Interpreter Act, the Interpreter Law does not put forth any requirements or timeline for educational interpreters at all. At all. There was a version that did include that, but that is not the version that passed and got enacted as law. I know that there will be a lot of questions about very specific scenarios. What about this location? What about this doctor's offices, for example? The search that I shared before that is on the Scrib website, go look. Go practice using that tool. Filter by location, filter by name, see if they are listed there. If they're there on DHEC's registry, they are governed by DHEC. One of the first things I said tonight is that I am not a lawyer and I'm not giving legal advice. If you have a question at that point about, I'm not sure, you need to reach out to your lawyer. You need to get legal counsel. You need to ask them what their interpretation of the law is and how you should handle that. From my understanding of the Interpreter Act, if you are regulated by DHEC, or if the entity is regulated by DHEC, then an appropriately credentialed interpreter is required. Outside of that, we can go back and look. These settings and these areas also require you to have a recognized credential. Any other questions? I really appreciate everyone's patience. I know that this is a very dry topic. It's not something that is enjoyable to watch by any means. I'm definitely not breaking out as a star presenter with this topic, but it is an important topic. We have a few dates that we would like to make everyone aware of. Please also, any questions that I haven't been able to address tonight, or any questions that come up later on, there will be many, I'm sure. Please email them to us so that we can give a proper answer to them and research and have the correct information available on the website. If you have a question, there's a good chance that there are a lot of other people that have the same question. So please speak up and ask. Okay. CDI workshop is going to be August the 26th. Terpsgiving is November the 4th, tentatively. CDI training, full CDI training is going to be June and July. Sorry about that. July and July, May, June, and July. Please mark those weekends on your calendar if you would like to attend that. And then the deadline for scholarship applications for this quarter is October the 1st. So please apply. And then also SCAD conference is in Somerville, right around the corner in August. Please make sure that you're supporting SCAD as well. Like I said, we have a partnership with them, we collaborate with them, and we want to maintain that relationship because that is extremely important. You can't serve a community that you do not connect with. As hard as people may try, You have to connect with the community that you serve. SCRID will be at SCAD conference. We will have a table up. And we invite everyone to come out and see us there and talk more about this. So I thank everyone for your participation tonight. There's some important links in the chat if you haven't seen that. And then there's also the evaluation for tonight's session. I would appreciate it if you took a moment to provide feedback. Let us know what we need to visit again. Let us know if we need a follow-up presentation, more clarification, anything like that, because we don't know unless you tell us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you to our interpreters, Sharon and Katie. Appreciate you. Let's see. And we want to remind everyone that this recording will be posted on our website under resources, recordings, so be on the lookout for that. And another way to continue this conversation, on our website, we also have a new feature, the member forum, and that is also under resources. You can see that member forum there. So we have a topic for job postings. So as I'm sure you get many emails for various jobs, interpreting for weddings and funerals, but also more permanent positions. Those are sent out by email, but you can also find them on the website. I'm gonna do a screen share. Is that okay, Josh? Or, well, do you want me to leave the
It's okay. I think people
leave-
have an opportunity to open this if they wanted to.
Okay.
Jill, you asked about the app, the Wild Apricot member app, if it's already up and running. It is. You can go ahead, go to the App Store, iPhone or Android, download the member app for Wild Apricot, and it's your same account information that you would use to log into your SCRID account. Log into that, you can update your profile, you can register for workshops, you can see what events are coming up, a whole number of things. It's a good tool to have. So I'm proud that we were able to make that and push that out for everyone.
So you can see the section of our website for the member forum, general questions and discussions, professional development resources. So you're also welcome to continue the conversation on the forum. Any thoughts or suggestions or concerns that come up about the Interpreter Act, you can post there.
And you'll also notice that there is the option to subscribe to the forum. If you would like, you can also click on the individual topics in the forum. So if you click on job postings, you can subscribe to just that topic. That way you get email notifications anytime someone puts out an interpreting job that needs to be filled. There are some guidelines that are present for topics that you can see at the top. Please remember that this is a professional, courteous space. It is not there for screaming at each other and being keyboard warriors. This is a tool to make sure that access is provided and for us to use to improve ourselves. And then there was also a comment in the chat about CEUs. CEUs are not provided for tonight's session. I realized that the asset logo was on the flyer. That was a mistake on our part. There are no CEUs for tonight's session. Tia, do you mind sharing the link for the evaluation in the chat?
Of course. So I don't know if I have that link handy
No problem. Let's see.
in the shared drive.
Instead of making everyone wait for that, we'll go ahead and end tonight's session if there's not any more questions, and we will email the evaluation out to everyone that's registered in just a moment.
We had a question if the app that you mentioned already up and running.
Yes, the app is
Can you
already.
answer that? Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a good evening, and please continue the conversation if questions come up later on, and I'm sure they will reach out to us and ask so that we can answer for everyone. Thank you.